Hello, this is Sandy Trefger. Welcome back to tutorial video number 2 for my Solitude Winter album that I designed for Country Craft Creations. In my project, I used the authentic Solitude paper collection that you can order from Country Craft Creations. I also used artisan cardstock. Here on the screen, you will see the cut list for the cardstock to create your pockets and flaps for this album. So go ahead and pause it and jot down what you need to go ahead and cut, and then we'll get started on the project. I have already pre-cut all of my pockets and flaps and scored them and miter cut where necessary. I will show you how to do that in a few of the clips here in this video. I put labels on mine so I know where they go, so I'm going to set these all aside. All the pockets are made the same with the 1/2 inch scoring on both sides and across the bottom, regardless of where they're put in your album. So this is a really simple album to make. So let's open it up, and you should be on page 1, which is the very first page and the inside cover. So we have one pocket that will go on the inside cover. So this one was cut at 11 inches by 3.5 inches, and you should have scored it at a 1/2 inch on the left side and a 1/2 inch on the right side and a 1/2 inch on the bottom. So I know I'm not showing you how to score that, and I didn't do that in the video, but they're all made the same. I also miter cut all the corners, or the 2 corners on the bottom, and then you burnish and fold these up to create this pocket. So it's really easy to create pockets this way. So you just want to make sure that your score lines are burnished really well. And then you will put your score tape or your glue on the back side. Now mine's going to open up to the left. You never want to open it to the inside of your album because you couldn't get anything out easily. So you want this one to go across the side, so I didn't cover up the pattern paper with a pretty snowy tree. And I'm just turning my album so it's a little easier for me to glue down and show you what I'm doing. So you put your glue or your score tape on the 1/2 inch sections of the hinge that are folded to the back side of your pocket. This will give you a pocket that has a little bit of space, so you can put more photo mats and things inside of that. So you just line it up along the bottom edge. Make sure you're not getting into the fold of the album cover, and line it up top and bottom, and then burnish, hold it down and burnish really well so this pocket will stay stuck down. Now we're not going to add in any of the patterned paper to these sections. I am not going to do that in this video. I'm just going to show you how to construct and add in the elements, the pockets and the flaps, and then you will be patterning it on your own, as you may be using a different patterned paper than I am. But I will show you photos at the end of each of my pages so that you can see what I did. So I've got this all burnished down and checked on the inside to make sure nothing was stuck down. So that is the pocket on the inside cover. Next, you will add your flip up elements on page 1. Now these you would have cut 2 center flaps that are 4 inch by 6 inches. Put the 6 inch into your scoreboard and score it a 1/2 inch on each one. You just want 1/2 inch score on each piece to make these flaps. You will need 1 magnet set to hold these closed if you desire. So open this up. You see where I've got the score line, the 1/2 inch. You fold it back and you burnish it really well. You're going to put 1 at the top and 1 at the bottom. I'm just burnishing right quick to make sure it lays down flat. I'll go ahead and do the same. So they are the same size. They are scored once. So you have one that has a score line at the top and one that has one at the bottom. It doesn't matter which one because they are the same. You take your page, your album page, and you apply glue. And I'm going to go ahead and put the bottom one on first, and I'm going to center it. I'm just eyeballing it. If you want to measure with a ruler and mark with pencil, that's fine. I'm putting the glue on the back side of the flap of the hinge part, the 1/2 inch section only, and I'm just going to line it up and make sure it's lined up straight at the bottom with the cut edge of the page. So burnish, clean off any excess glue, open that back, burnish. Now close it back up so that you can line up the second one. You want them lined up as perfectly as you can. So I'm just checking, make sure they're cut the same. And so I'm going to put glue on the back side again, just on the 1/2 inch flap. Line it up. Make sure it doesn't extend beyond the page there at the top, and put it on as straight as possible. You have a few seconds if you're using glue to get that lined up. And again, wipe off any excess glue that you might have and burnish down. Now you would put the magnet on before you add any patterned paper. So I have one set here. I have a plus and a minus. These are the basic gray magnet snaps that you can order from countrycraftcreations.com. So I put them together so that the papers are on both sides exposed. Peel one off, and I'm going to stick it down underneath. Now you want to make sure you're allowing enough for the top one to grab, but yet have enough room for pattern paper to cover it. So then pull your other backing off and close it down onto the sticky part, and then rub it, and then gently separate the magnets so you have them in position where you need them here on these flaps. This is the only magnet set that I use in this album. You may want to use more, and that's fine. So to keep them from coming loose, just as a security option, I add a little bit of score tape over each magnet until I'm ready to pattern this page. And that's all you have to do to page 1. So here's your sleeve on the inside, and now we're ready for page 2, which is the back side of page 1. So page 2 is going to be a full flap with a side pocket. So let me grab those pieces. Full flap is cut to 7.5 inches wide by 9.5 inches tall. And on your 7.5 inch wide side, that is where you're going to score the 1/2 inch right there. Just on one side only. So I'm just going to show you right quick where I put the 7.5 inch into the scoreboard, and then I would score just 1/2 inch on one side. Make sure you burnish the score line really well so that it folds good. And with the artisan cardstocks, I like to turn it back again and fold it a couple of extra times so that it does fold in and out really well. So then we have that one ready to go on page 2. I also have a pocket. That's the side pocket. We ended up cutting 5 of these the same size. These are all 10.5 by 3.5 inches, and you score and miter them all the same. So I'm burnishing the fold lines. These are scored 1/2 inch on each end and 1/2 inch on one long side. So this is going to be a side pocket, and it fits in underneath. And I'm just deciding which way I want to open it. I do want the pocket on the right side opening to the left, and the flap on the left side of the page. So if you don't want the ridge of your 1/2 inch flap showing on your page under your paper, then you will want to insert it and glue it into the sleeve, but you want to make sure you don't glue your sleeve shut. And if you do this, you need to just miter cut at a slight angle, just the 1/2 inch ends of this hinge. So there you have the miter, and now you're going to, it'll make it easier to insert inside the sleeve. You only want glue on one side of your 1/2 inch, the side that touches the page side. So this is where I'm going to put it, right here. See where it's folded up? Open it down. Put your glue on just the 1/2 inch section. Then carefully insert this into your sleeve. Had a little bit too much glue there. So insert that into your sleeve, keeping it open so that you don't glue it shut. Line it up and then burnish the glue side. Now if you want magnets to hold these closed, you can put these on now before you add patterned paper. I am not going to add magnets to mine. I think they lay down just fine. And you see I still have the sleeve opening there on the side, and I'm just making sure that there's no glue holding it inside. There's our flap. So this is on sideways. So now we turn it back so we have a large page flap that opens up, and then we're going to put the pocket in. So that pocket is the side pocket. It's the one that measured 10.5 by 3.5, and you scored it a 1/2 inch on each end on the short sides and then a 1/2 inch across the bottom. So we want it to open to the left side. We mitered the corners to make it lay down flatter, and I'm putting glue on the back side of each 1/2 inch section. And that's the side that you see exposed once you have the flaps folded down. So line that up. Make sure it does not extend past into the spine, but stays on the page. Maybe just a 1/16 of an inch from the fold line will make it a little easier for the page to fold or to open and close. So clean off all glue. Now you will notice in my book that I have added 1/2 inch strips of scraps of paper between each page. This is optional. Since the gussets are 1/2 inch, you would need to trim yours down to 3/8 inch wide. Cut the length that you want, usually the length of the page, to pattern those sections in between the pages. So I had already done that off camera. Now we're ready for page 3. Page 3 will have, I'm looking at my notes, a bottom pocket, which was cut at 7 7/8 by 4.5. So I am looking for that real quick. 7 7/8 long by 4.5 wide. Now to help you be able to see your page better, one great tip is to take a piece of white copy paper and slide that under your page. So here's the pocket for the bottom. It's going to fit on the bottom. And again, you will see that you have a 1/2 inch score on each side, and then one across the bottom, and then you miter cut the two bottom corners. Fold it up and burnish, and then glue to the page. Just make sure that you put it more towards the right cut edge, not towards the center fold section. So you want to be able to keep your book pages opening and closing easily. So you don't want them hindered by any thickness of the pocket or anything like that that might get in the way. So this is real easy. Just put your glue on as before, and then glue your pocket down onto page 3. Turn to page 4, which will have a side pocket and 2 short flaps that open to the center. So the short flaps, now your pocket is the same size that we've done before, the 10.5 by 3.5 scored onto 2 short ends and across the bottom. So this is going to be a side pocket on page 4. So I've already scored it, but I'm going to show you how to miter cut this. So if you have your score board, you put the long side in and score it a 1/2 inch. You can turn it and score it a 1/2 inch again. I just go ahead and score at 10. then turn it and score another 1/2 inch along the bottom. So this is how you do all the pockets for this album. Then fold and burnish. Then take your scissors, and I like to use small scissors, it just makes it easier for me, and then I just cut at an angle across the bottom where the intersection is of those two score lines. Don't cut into them. So I'm trying to show you up close, just cut across that, and then fold and check to see if you need to trim a little bit more off or not. So when you fold it, that mitering should give you a clean corner and help the pocket to lay down a lot flatter without having a lot of bulk there in that corner. So that's how you do your pockets. So on page 4, I'm going to glue this one down to the left side. I think that's what I'm going to do. Let me check. Or maybe the center side. No. I can't remember which side I glued it on, so just give me a second here. You can glue it on either side, whichever you prefer. And I am going to glue it to the right side so my tags come out to the left, not towards the fold. When it's a short pocket like this, you could do either side. So I'm cleaning that up, and I'm just going to burnish it really well. I was thinking that I put it on the left side because of those short flaps, but the short flaps are still going to go on there and will work just fine. Now the short flaps, you cut 2 that are 4 1/4 by 4 3/4, and the 4 3/4 inch side you score at a 1/2 inch on each one, just one score line. Then burnish that. So this gives you a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 square flaps, and you've got 2 of these. So burnish that little flap, fold them back and forth so that they flip back and forth easily. Just score it a couple of times each direction. And these are going to glue on top of the pocket. One at the slightly towards the top and one slightly towards the bottom. So I'm just deciding how much space I want to allow. I want equal space at the top and at the bottom. So you can play with yours and glue them on how you like. You might want one all the way to the top and one all the way to the bottom. So I'm going to put mine down, I think about 1/4 inch from the top. So let me get the glue on. And you want to line that flap up, the fold of the flap, with the right edge of the page. I'm going to get it straight, and it does extend over the pocket just a little bit. So I'm just straightening it up some. You have a few seconds if you're using the glue to do that, and then burnish that in. And now you're going to take the second one and attach it the same distance from the bottom as you did the top one. And once you have it attached, also burnish that one. And all of these can be patterned after you have inserted them into your book. I know a lot of people like to pattern and decorate their pages outside of the album, and that's perfectly fine. I tend to work better with mine in the book. Keeps me from doing things upside down. That's usually the main reason. It keeps me from putting something on the back side upside down and then having to completely redo it. So whatever works best for you, you can certainly do that. But a lot of these sections where you're putting the flaps in, you do need to put them in before you add any patterned paper. So these make little flaps. You could add magnet if you wanted to, but I think it's going to work fine without it. So for this one, I did decide that I needed to extend that pocket, and I wanted it to be something decorative, so I punched out snowflakes on the natural or ivory colored artisan cardstock. I used this snowflake punch that I have, and I'm going to save my little snowflakes because I think they'll work really good for some of the decorating I will do on my album. So I'm going to push them off to the side. So I cut this piece the length of my pocket, and I'm just going to glue it on to the pocket only so that it has an extension, and then when my flaps come over, just the snowflakes will be showing. So I know I said I wasn't going to be doing any decorating in this tutorial, but I do want to show you how to extend a pocket if you decide that it needs to be a little bit wider. Page 5 is for our triple pockets that we cut 3 pieces, and I'm getting those out right quick. So I've got my piece of paper under page 5. So you need 3 pieces of cardstock cut to 8 inches by 3.5 inches. Go ahead and score a 1/2 inch on each end and a 1/2 inch across the bottom. You will only fold up the bottom score line of only one piece, only one pocket. The others will stay flat for placement and guides. You will miter cut the 2 bottom corners and then corner round the 2 top ones if desired. I use the 1/2 inch corner rounder on my chomper, so I have those rounded, and then you cut the 1/2 inch side hinges at an angle so they don't show where it's rounded. So here I'm just showing you where the placement will be. The bottom one is folded up on the bottom. The second one is just folded on the 2 sides. You keep the bottom score flap flat, and the same on the number 3. So this is how they're going to be positioned. Now before we glue them down, you do need to go ahead and select a piece of patterned paper to glue down at the top of the page. You don't have to cover the whole page, just a scrap of your patterned paper right here. So I'm going to grab something that I have in my scraps so far and go ahead and glue those down. And here I'm just checking the position one more time before I glue that paper down. If you want a ribbon tie closure like I have in my album, you'll need to go ahead and put your ribbon on now. So I have cut 2 pieces of the seam binding ribbon that is about 12 to 14 inches each, and I want it kind of wrinkled up, so I am spritzing them with water, and I'm just going to crumple them up while they're damp. I'm using a baby wipe to keep my countertop from getting wet, so I'm just squeezing that on the water out of it, and then I will dry it with my heat gun. So I'm just getting it really wrinkled up. Now if you have time, you can do this and let it dry overnight, or as I said, you can use a heat gun to dry it. So I'm going to go ahead and dry it real quick. Once the ribbon is dry, you want to go ahead and attach it to the top and the bottom of the page. And I like to just use score tape. I use a piece of score tape to hold it down. You could also use glue if you wanted to. So I'm just going to center this here at the top, and then I'm going to match the bottom one up. I'm going to lay the top one down, pull it down so I can see where the placement is, and then I'm going to go ahead and tape the bottom one on in the same manner onto the page. So just lining up the top one, putting the bottom one down, and then laying that tape over the bottom piece. This is so we can tie it in the middle over all the pockets and the tags. So this is what it'll look like when it's tied right here in the middle. So I'm going to leave it like that for now and then trim some of it if I need to. So I selected my piece of scrap paper. I had this piece with the some of the greenery there on the side with snow and some snowflakes. So I'm going to measure this down. Mine's about 2.5 inches wide or tall, and then it's trimmed to fit the page. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue that right over the ribbon here at the top before I put any of my pockets on. And I'm just checking again to make sure that I have enough to cover all the way up. So that works just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this and glue it down. Once you have a top piece of pattern paper glued down onto your page 5, you're ready to go ahead and assemble your pockets and glue them down. So I'm going to make sure that the bottom pocket, the bottom flap is burnished really well. You want that one folded up so that you have 3 hinges on the back, and we're going to put the bottom one on first. So I'm sorry that this is out of camera range right here at the bottom, but what I'm doing is putting the glue on all 3 flaps on the back side, and you will line this bottom pocket up, the fold of the bottom of the pocket right up against the cut bottom edge of the page on page 5. Just make sure that you have it on straight across the bottom and then also side to side. And peel that tape backing off. That's what I'm doing in that section. So here we're ready for pocket number 2, the middle one. You leave that bottom score line flat. You just fold the 2 sides and see how it fits in there. So that score line will show you where to stop and to line it up straight with the bottom pocket. So put your glue on the 2 folded sides only, and then you're also going to want to put glue on the back side of the pocket where the score line is. So right here in this 1/2 inch, I'm just going to put on the flat side on the back of it. And this will seal up the pocket. If you want a tall pocket, then you would not seal that part, and your tag or whatever you put in there would go all the way down through to the bottom pocket. So make sure you line this up and burnish the sides and across the bottom. And I'm just double checking to make sure it's still open underneath there after I've glued down the pocket. And then go ahead and put in the 3rd and final pocket in the same manner, and then you will pattern these pockets individually later on with whatever pattern paper you want and measure to see what size or height you need for each section. On page 6, I am going to put just a single flap centered. It's a 5x7 flap that we cut, and then it was scored on the 5-inch side at a 1/2 inch to create the flap, and you just glue this centered onto page 6. So here's where I've scored it. I'm going to go ahead and burnish it both directions to make sure that it opens and closes good. So I'm just eyeballing it. I'm going to center it. You could put it at the top or you could put it at the bottom, but I'm going to center mine with equal space at the top and the bottom, and just put glue on one side of that hinge, and then glue this down onto page 6. And just be sure that you burnish it and wipe off any excess glue. Okay, so now we're ready for page 7. And page 7 is going to be another one of those side pockets that we cut that are 10.5 by 3.5, and we score the 2 sides and across the bottom. So I've already scored mine, and then you also fold it up and then miter cut the 2 bottom corners, which I have not done yet on this one. So I'll go ahead and show you that. So I'm just burnishing up the bottom flap and the 2 sides. Which gives me the corner markings, and then I just cut at an angle and make sure that I don't cut into the score lines where they meet. And then I fold it up and check it, and if you need to trim just a little bit more, you can. You don't want anything sticking out, but you don't want to cut away too much. You don't want to cut into that corner. Okay, then you decide where you want to put it on your page. Like I said, it is a side pocket. So I'm putting the glue on my 1/2 inch flaps, 2 sides and across the bottom, and I'm going to put mine on the left side of page 7. So turn to page 8, which is a really easy one. We're not going to add any flaps or pockets to page 8. You will pattern it with pattern paper of your choice, and then you will add a photo mat, a large photo mat in any size that you want. Now, of course, if you want to cut extra pockets or flaps, you're more than welcome to do that. On mine, I did leave it blank with no flaps and no pockets. So now we're ready to work on page 9. So page 9 is a side pocket that goes inside of a full flap. So we have a full flap here that we cut 7.5 inches wide by 9.5 tall, and we scored on the 7.5 inch side at a 1/2 inch. So I'm burnishing to get the fold of that hinge for this large flap. So basically this is done pretty much the same way as page 2 earlier in the video. So I'm going to go ahead and get the full flap down. And I'm going to attach it to the right side of the page so that it opens out. So go ahead and get your glue again and apply glue to the hinge. And then carefully attach it down onto page 9. So I'm lining up the fold of the hinge right along the cut edge of page 9 on the right. So open it up and burnish, and if there's any excess glue that comes out, that's okay. Just go ahead and wipe that off. Okay, so now open it up, and we will be putting a side pocket in on page 9. So I'm just checking to see that it does fold okay. If you have any where it catches there on the left from the full flap, I forgot to trim mine off some, so you may need to trim that a little bit. Open up the full flap on page 9 and then go ahead and attach one of the side pockets to the left side of page 9. So this is another one of those that is cut 10.5 by 3.5, where you've scored the two sides at a 1/2 inch and the bottom at a 1/2 inch. Miter cut the bottom corners, and then glue this along the side on page 9 where it opens to the right. So the bottom fold line will go towards the left of the page, towards the spine of your book. So just make sure you don't put that fold of that pocket over the page fold towards the spine. You want to leave about a 1/16 of an inch or less. You want to just give it some clearance so that it folds well. So go ahead and attach that and burnish it down. I did decide that the full flap on page 9 was just a little bit too wide right there. I didn't like how it was catching, so I took my trimmer. It's real easy to do. Just take your trimmer and make sure you line up your page very straight in at the top of your trimmer and just cut off a very narrow little piece, about a 1/16 of an inch or less. So I'll show you. I just cut that off, and it's just enough so that that full flap can clear when it's opening and closing on that page. So that's much better. Page 10 has the large side pocket that we cut to 10.5 inches by 5 inches. Score the 5-inch side at 1/2 inch across the bottom, and then of course you score the two short ends at a 1/2 inch on each side. So burnish those after you've miter cut. Burnish, and this will be a larger side pocket. You can make these any depth that you want to. I just feel that this size, once it's folded up 4.5 wide, was plenty wide enough. So I'm going to go ahead and put the glue on the hinges, and you're going to glue this down onto page 10 on the right side so that the opening of the pocket goes towards the left. Page 11 is one of the bonus pages that I added into this album that I did not have in my original recipe album. So for page 11, I'm adding a variation of a waterfall. So you have 3 pieces that are cut 6 inches by 9 inches and 1 piece that is 4.5 by 7. So I've taken the 4.5 by 7, scored the 7-inch side at a 1/2 inch to create one hinge at the bottom. This one will go down on the bottom to hold the waterfall pages flat in the album. I am not going to use a magnet on this. You can if you want to. I found that I did not need one. And the 3 6 by 9 inch, you're going to score the 9-inch side at a 1/2 inch on all 3 of these to create the hinge that will attach these into the top. Now for mine, I attached these in before I patterned the page, and so I ended up having to piece the sides with some patterned paper, and I like the way it turned out. So if you like that, that's fine, but for beginners I would suggest that you probably go ahead and add patterned paper to your page 11 before you attach your waterfall flaps into your book. So I'm just burnishing both directions to make sure that these open up and down. So see how it swings easily. And these are going to go at the top, and this one's going to go at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to attach mine in with glue. I'll start with the first one, And again, if you want, this would be when you would add your pattern paper to your page first and then attach your waterfall flap. So this is going to have 3 large waterfall flaps. I've taken the first one and I'm lining up the fold of the waterfall flap right against the top. Make sure you get this first one straight and center it on the page at the top. So then lift it up and burnish, and then you're ready to put the second one down underneath. So you use the cut edge of the first one as your placement guide. So go ahead and put your glue down onto the hinge, and then make sure though that you're lining it up exactly. So pull the other one down to kind of check to make sure it's even on both sides before you actually press down on that glue, and adjust if you need it just a little bit. And I decided that I didn't want the 1/2 inch space, so I moved mine up to 1/4 of an inch. So I just wanted 1/4 inch of it showing at the bottom. You can use the 1/2 inch or you can use the 1/4, whichever you want to do. So I'm going to wipe off this glue where I moved it. But you do want to make sure that you're getting it down straight. So the next one I'm going to put it 1/4 inch below the fold line of the second one. Because these are longer, I think you actually need to just have the 1/4 inch. But if I made the score line 1/4 inch, then you wouldn't have as much attached and holding these flaps down. So you need that 1/2 inch, I think, for the flaps, but you also need to have that full 1/2 inch to hold it down. So here, I noticed on this one I didn't probably cut it out right, so I needed to trim just a little bit off the side. So it's important to double check that, because you don't want one of your waterfalls sticking out more than the other on top of it. So I double checked before I actually added glue, and then just trimmed off a little bit where I had probably miscut it on my cutter. So I'm going to line this up now, get it as straight as possible. Use the one, fold down the one above it to make sure that you're getting it down straight. So see, I'm going to check, make sure it's lined up right, and then press down. So this one only has 3 flaps because they're large. So I'm going to pull this down, and then this bottom one, it will attach at the bottom so that it folds over the 3 waterfall flaps, and it will hold them down. You can add a magnet now if you want. You would put a magnet on the back side of the bottom flap and on the front of the top flap, and then cover it with pattern paper. But I am not going to use magnets on mine because I felt that it laid down flat just fine without one. So make sure this is centered where you want it and straight, and the fold of the flap is lined up with the bottom edge of the page. And then go ahead and burnish that. So now we're almost finished. We're ready for page 12. So this is our last page, and for this one, page 12, we have another side pocket that's cut 10.5 by 3.5, and again you score 1/2 inch on the 2 short ends and 1/2 inch along one edge to create the bottom miter cut. Fold and burnish, and then go ahead and glue that to page 12, and I'm going to put mine on the right side so that it opens to the left. This concludes this tutorial video series for my Solitude Winter album. I want to thank you so very much for watching. And next I'm including a cut guide for the large mats that go inside the sleeves. I cut 6 that are 6 inch by 9 inch. You can cut more if you need more for your photos. Also suggested sizes for different photo mats out of your cardstock, and for your pattern paper, go ahead and cut the pattern papers to finish your album. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I encourage you to shop with Country Craft Creations. Until next time, bye-bye.